Yeah.
Where my shoulders are, just moving the chair. Yeah.
So it's a good.
Yeah, good, good. My son teaches English. Not sure what he's doing now. He's moved around. I think They gave me kind of a special work recently. And work remedial. He actually went to grade school. And my sister's class. My father threw him out of the backyard.
Okay, we're done.
Hey,
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Bronze.
I like the briefs. I'm not as good at that.
And I don't think we can go in for the last day.
No, that's okay.
No, no, yeah.
All right, good morning, everybody. We'll come to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will note for the record that all 4 board members are present. And good morning to everyone. Under our administrative portion of the agenda, I move the approval of the minutes from the March 6, 2023 board meeting.
Second?
It's been seconded by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Item 2, I move the acknowledgement of Secretary of State Directive 2023-06, May 2nd, 2023 primary special election canvass instructions and House Bill 458 clarifications, and the acknowledgement of memorandum 2023-01, responsibilities of sheriffs and police in the May 2nd, 2023 election, and note that this is confidential and not for public disclosure. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any questions?
I have
Yes,
one
Ms. Chappelle.
comment, just on our summary that is provided to us, not obviously on the actual directive. There's just a spelling error of the word affidavit and under at the heading of Roman numeral 2.
Thank you. That is
Sorry,
noted.
I can't help it, but it's a little typo.
Thank you. That's noted for the record.
Thank you.
Any other unreadiness?
No.
All right, we're prepared for the question. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. I move the acknowledgement of municipal ward boundaries and corresponding precinct boundaries for Euclid. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Chappelle, and we'll ask Director Pilati to give us some insight.
So these ward and precinct boundaries, this is similar to what we've done earlier in the year with other jurisdictions, and as we're making our way through, now we're at the city of Euclid. Euclid, this one here actually lost 7 precincts, and so John, and looking and going through and using his process, the reason that Euclid lost so many is that they have been on the lower, regarding suburban communities, the lower average per precinct numbers in the county. They were under 900 in the mid 800s, and that,
Is there population loss driving that, or what's driving
some
that?
of that stems back to years and years ago, that there was a lawsuit within the city of Euclid regarding the layout of the city, and had to do with the school district, and nobody could touch anything in the city of Euclid. And we have all come out of that, and from there now playing a little bit of catch up. So what John could have even been a little bit more aggressive, but didn't need to. This was good enough for where we were. I did have a phone call with the mayor of Euclid, explained to her, completely understood. She had a conversation with the council at a council meeting, they did bring up the topic. They didn't pass any legislation, but they had no concerns and understood what's going on with that. And the assistant law director informed me of that. So with that, we are, as far as the city is concerned, there's no questions, and they have 8 wards. And actually, and for whatever reason, one of the wards had 1 less precinct than every other one. So we actually, with the removal of these 7, it makes it so every ward is balanced, the number of precincts in those wards. And if approved today, staff this Friday will start to do the DIMS data entry work. We have teams of employees lined up next week to do all the proofing. And by Friday, that would be, I think, the 13th, 14th, something like that, whatever next week from Friday is. We would be done with this project, website would be updated, everything would be good.
Just a question if I could. So there'll be increased number of voters in each of, given the precincts configuration, or am I reading that correctly? That we will now have an increased number of average voters per precinct?
That is correct. So we will.
So are we ready for that? Will we be ready for those with that additional foot traffic? And will our poll workers are going to be aware of the changes? So then we'll have people showing up thinking they're voting in a
No.
precinct that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, no, so we will do our notices, we'll send letters out to all Euclid. As of right now, their election is in November. They don't have anything prior to that unless there happens to be, for example, an August election. So we do have some time to work with the city on that, and we will send out notices. As far as volume, the goal is not to reduce any polling locations. So same number of polling locations to servicing the people, and we will do that. And our goal is to try to have 1,150. You have to set a goal to try to set this up. So they're still falling under that, which I think is good. But we will definitely work with the city to make sure everybody knows where to go and how to take care of that.
Thank you. Chair would like to acknowledge Mr. Eddy.
Thank you.
Anything that you'd like to add to what the director said?
No, but I would like to add to Mr. Paul's comment that I would agree that it was partly led by lower population that happened over the last 10 years. Definitely have.
Thank you, sir.
One other question, if I'm not sure. How many more communities? I know at one point you said we were, periodically as we move through the year, we'll see more these come through. How many more? And we have City of Cleveland.
They haven't,
Okay, I'm not trying to talk anything up, but I'm
No,
just wondering
no.
what's coming.
they haven't started a process, but they need to.
Yeah.
Because theirs could be, well, theirs is always big, but it could be more massive than that they actually potentially could lose to wards, which really puts things crazy. But as far as outside of Cleveland, right now, North Olmsted. So we originally sent something out to North Olmsted and they found an error in what they did. Sent it back, we've made those changes and I pushed maps back out to city officials in North Olmsted with a goal of April 28th, our next board meeting, us taking care of that. Outside of there, John needs to work on, I think, Westlake, Bedford, and Broadview Heights. Yeah, so I think we have those 3 cities that remain to actually, John, to configure the precinct boundaries for me to be able to send those out. But we should be doing this again next meeting with North Olmsted.
Do we need to be proactive with the City of Cleveland to reach out to encourage them, or what? I mean, are we going to be in a hardship in any way if we wait to get the information from them, or should we be proactive in some way?
I think there's been a little bit of initial conversation. I think Brent has talked with some people there. They actually hire a firm that they bring in to, because of the size of the massiveness of it, and work with them on that. So they have to have it done. Technically, they need to have it done before their 2025 election.
Oh, okay.
However, with the elections coming up, I would want them not to wait till the absolute, that's for them, but I can't force them. But we,
Sure.
so, but theirs needs to be done the next time that their city offices appear in the ballot, which is
2025.
2025.
Any other questions from the board? All right, we have the motion on the floor. We're prepared for the question. All in favor of this acknowledgement, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm not positive. Did we acknowledge, or did the board acknowledge the memorandum?
Yes.
2023?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
did, sir. Thank you. All right, we'll move to administrative item 4. And I move the board adopt the Cuyahoga County Board of Election appointment to elected office policy. Is there a second?
I'll second. I have some questions.
Sure, seconded by Ms. Chappelle. Director Pilati, if you would give us some information, and then we'll go to Ms. Chappelle's question.
Sure. So the revised code requires the Board of Elections to issue certificate of an appointment to elected office when there's a vacancy in office that appears. This is not a vacancy that is filled through us conducting an election. It is whether it's an office in which the political party makes the appointment and it fills, or if it's the city council itself that fills that position, depending on statutory city, charter city. And what happens is that body, that municipality appointing authority, provides the Board of Elections with notice of that. And typically they provide us with an oath of office. They need to provide us with an oath of office. And email hand delivered, and sometimes there's more information from the city, sometimes less. And then with that, the board has a ministerial duty in which we issue this certificate. So we are not authorizing or picking who it is, but we do that. And this has worked well for many years. And recently, there's been a little bit of a confusion with the municipality in which the municipality itself isn't quite sure, or there's disagreement as to who the council members are. And we had a oath of office delivered to us. We acknowledged it, and then come to find out after that no, that wasn't the right person. So what we are doing is trying to put a little bit more structure with it. This board has asked for some more structure around this process, some more information to make sure that we are acknowledging the correct individual. And so this is what kind of happened. This policy, simple policy, was born out of it, and that an oath of office by itself is not good enough anymore for us to put something on an agenda for this board to acknowledge. So we want some more information. Worked with Mark and with the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State's office did say that we do have the discretion to do something like this. And thought it was a good idea. And so what we did is we created a simple form that we would provide to all the law directors and clerks of council and school boards, that if they could fill this out when giving an oath and give us a little bit more information, such as the section of the charter that states that they have the authority to do that and who has the authority to do it. If it was at a meeting, the date of that meeting, and then if we could have meeting minutes, or if that takes a while, if we could at least have the agenda where we see that it appeared on there, getting some more information from these entities to make sure that this is in fact the correct person. So to help them facilitate this process, we created our own internal form, which we can't necessarily mandate them to do, but it kind of makes it easier for them. But if they were to provide, say, the oath and meeting minutes, we would have what we need to say, yes, this is the way that we want to do this. The part of the policy is, where you have some law directors that say, well, why are you asking all this? Well, we actually have a board policy in which we are asking for this, kind of what we, different but similar to when it came to campaign finance and bank statements. Can't mandate it, but our board policy is we're going to ask for them right out of the gate. Because, for example, canceled checks, there aren't as many of those anymore because campaigns are using debit cards and that bank statement gives them to us. So that's kind of the spirit of why we are doing this, as well as the board's like, hey, let's do our job a little bit better, and we agree with that, and that's where we landed. So with that, what questions do we have?
I just wanted to, is this broad enough? Because it's, we're saying it's for filling vacancies or appointments to elected office and filling vacancies, but will it apply to recalls or, some of the East Cleveland situation that we had? Are we anticipating this form would be used for those any other kind of anything else to be put on the ballot, and it just seems to me we want to make sure we're covering, unless we're going to have multiple forms, certification forms. I mean, is this broad enough to cover every
Well,
instance?
and I do want to clarify the difference being that if we, like for, so for, if there is a recall and the recall successful, we know for sure there's a vacancy because we conducted that election and we know that that person was removed from office. So we know that there is a hole to fill.
Okay.
So, for that example, in the recall, and then it is, so that's how the vacancy was created. We know that it's a bona fide vacancy. But this then would, in fact, the situation we're in is because they were trying to fill a vacancy caused by that recall. So I think,
Okay, so this form will be broad enough to cover those other kinds of issues. I'm just, because we were saying if we're approving appointments to elected office, I just want to make sure we're not excluding some other situation where we would need a certification, but, you know.
I would say there are, so this is an example, is some charters, their recall provisions, it's a two-part. Question one is, should the person be recalled? And then they actually have a filing deadline where candidates file, and they vote on that also. Now, the second question is only valid if the person is recalled, and if they're not, it's moot. So in that scenario, we would actually issue a certificate of election in that
Right.
area. That's not what East Cleveland was, as an example.
Mhm.
And there are many other charters that don't have the name appear. It's, you have it, and then people submit a resume in and city council does interviews and
Appointment.
pick somebody. like that. So I think, but
And I think if I understand the question, sorry to jump in, that this does not cover non-elected appointments, like potentially a clerk. A lot of those individuals are not elected. This policy and form would not apply to that. But if somebody was representing themselves to be the clerk and certifying something, it would typically be a petition that then
Right.
would have a full-blown hearing in front of the board where you could really get into the facts of
Okay.
of what's going on.
The only thing I would suggest you consider on the
Mhm.
form though.
Sure.
Is that the certification include language, so where it says, I certify that the foregoing is true and accurate. I would just have something in there saying, I am authorized to certify, to make sure that the person is, I mean, this is just me, and not to nit wordsmith, but I mean, part of the issue was we weren't sure who was really authorized to submit the information, or even to fill out the certification. So maybe we consider language that says, I am authorized to certify and do hereby certify that the foregoing is true and accurate. And then under where we have the signature line, where you've got signed by appointing authority or representative, I would put or authorized representative maybe, just to make sure we don't run into the problem that we did before about who really is authorized to certify. Just a few couple suggestions.
I agree. I think making that representation that. it's a
Yeah,
little
they need to
warranty.
be representing that they are really authorized to even give us the certification. That would be my only comment, Mr. Chair. That's all I had.
Any other comments? Catherine, Ms. Sticker?
I like this idea because I know sometimes these vacancies occur and not often in some places and they get a little confused. Oop, I gotta send it to the Board of Elections and what info to include. So I think this actually will help streamline the process. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor to adopt this policy, and I would add with Ms. Chappelle's
Friendly
edits,
amendment.
friendly amendments
Yeah.
to the document.
Yeah.
Okay, that's before us. Thank you. We're ready for the question. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Ayes have it, and it is so ordered. We'll now move on to the ballot portion of our agenda. I move to acknowledge the acknowledgement of the ballot proofs for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election in accordance with the ballot proofing policy approved by the board at the March 12th, 2021 board meeting.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered. I move item 6, the final approval of the ballot order for the May 6, 2023 primary election.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Candidate and petition services. I move the acknowledgement of the following candidate withdrawals. Berea Municipal Court Judge, full term commencing January the 2nd, 2024. Christopher Green, Democrat, and the withdrawal of Parma Member of Council Ward 1, Mark A. Schneider, Democrat. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered.
Mhm.
I move the acknowledgement of the following. Deaths in elected office. Kay Gary, Bedford Heights City Council, Member of Council Ward 4. Daniel T. Fritz, Village of Moreland Hills Mayor. And in acknowledging those deaths, I do so with sympathy from the board to their families and to their constituents. We also acknowledge the resignations from elected office of Josie Moore, Cleveland Heights City Council, Member of Council, John R. Colju, Seven Hills City Council, Member of Council at Large, and the appointments to elected office, Danielle Henderson, Bedford Heights City Council, Member of Council Ward 4, Janine R. Boyd, Cleveland Heights City Council, Member of Council, Heidi Mallory Weber, North Royalton City Council, Member of Council Ward 5, Justin Funk, Olmsted Falls Board of Education Board Member, Justin Costanzo, Seven Hills City Council, Member of Council at Large. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it and so ordered. I move the certification of Berea Municipal Court Judge nominated without primary election to the November 7th, 2023 general election primaries eliminated per Ohio Revised Code, section 3513 decimal 02. And that will be Berea Municipal Court Judge, full term commencing January 2nd, 2024, Sean Kilbane, Democratic Party. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion?
Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to point out to the board members that when you acknowledge the withdrawal of Christopher Green from this contest, what that did was cancel the election, because that was
Right.
what happened there. And so this is why we are moving this person forward to November, and we notify all municipalities of that change in their election schedule.
Excellent. Thank you, Director.
We have a motion, second.
Oh, yes, for Kilbane.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of
Yes.
item 9, the certification of Berea Municipal Court? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Thank you. Election officials. I move the authorization to pay 65 voting location managers, 73 voting location deputies, 727 precinct election officials, and 30 election substitute officials for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. And for the record, that grand total is $222,700. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Election support. I move the authorization to process payment in the amount not to exceed $5,500 for 11 private voting locations being used for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered. And I move the final authorization for the allocation of voting booths for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. Allocation quantities are based on one voting booth for every 175 registered voters per polling location. A total of 1,315 voting booths will be allocated, plus 154 DS200 precinct scanners, plus 65 ADA AutoMark voting units, and 228 electronic poll books. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered.
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I just to go back to that policy
Policy,
for
yes,
1
yes.
second. I did have one other question and I
Sure.
forgot to raise it. Let's see, where was that? So, based on the comment about what we're doing, I just wanted I did have a question about the second bullet point on the first page of the table of contents is, and I'm sorry, I forgot to raise it. So it says the Board of Elections, in consultation with the law director, school treasurer of the impacted jurisdiction, will ascertain if the vacancy requires an election. Do we normally do that? Because we're saying it's a ministerial act, but then we're also saying we're not responsible. So is that like, somebody's looked at that language? I apologize. I just want to make sure, if we aren't really deciding it, why do we have, maybe ascertain is the right language. I just want to, that was just a cause for pause when I read that. So if somebody's reviewed the language and they're okay with it, but I just want to make sure somebody doesn't interpret that to mean that we are making the decision, because somebody will say, we had somebody say that, Board of Elections, you took act, you signed off. I just want to make sure we're not bootstrapping ourselves with this language. So,
Sure.
sorry about that. I just.
No, and that part is dealing more with actually the vacancy itself. And so when we are made aware that a vacancy exists, then it's our staff talking with the law director to say, hey, what does your charter say? Do you appoint that, or do we need to conduct an election here for the replacement?
Okay.
And that's what happens after that, if they say, well, no, we go ahead and we pick it, okay, then you kind of move into the rest of the policy.
Okay, all right, that was my only one moment of unreadiness minutes. Thank you, that's fine.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Powell. The Human Resources agenda, I move the approval of our personnel agenda, the reclassification of Corey Milne from supervisor in candidate and petition services to assistant manager, candidate and petition services effective April 10th, 2023, and the tuition reimbursement for Marlene Robinson Statler in the amount of $1,000 for continuing education. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Thank you. On to new business. We will ask Director Carlotti to lead us.
Okay. I'm gonna just real briefly, East Cleveland on an update. Mark has been very busy defending the Board of Elections here and doing a great job with that. And so, where we are at is that we did have one case that was before the U.S. Supreme Court, in which we were a party, Ohio Supreme Court.
Excellent.
Yeah. Representing in Washington.
Arguing in front of the US Supreme Court.
And one of the main pieces of that case was that the petitioners wanted to compel the city to the council to appoint a clerk. And actually a clerk was appointed by president of council, which then kind of made that lawsuit moved at that point. So that I think been dismissed. So that is done because Eric Brewer has been named the clerk of council for East Cleveland. And there was another case before the Court of Appeals that Willa Hemmons brought against us, compelling us to conduct an election. And Mark had just given us an update that the judge denied that.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, the language was very clear. Mark, you should give us the language, and we appreciate your hard work, but I felt like we were vindicated by the court. And there was very specific language, as I recall, saying the Board of Elections did not have a duty. They didn't follow their charter. They didn't appoint a clerk. I mean, it was all of the things we were, we basically were saying to them, you can't come here and expect us to resolve your issue if you haven't followed your own charter. And I think we got that kind of language from the court. Is that a fair statement?
Right, yeah, I think they were paying attention to the briefing and the transcript, and I think they saw loud and clear what was going on. And they succinctly said that the East Cleveland Charter requires the clerk of council to certify the sufficiency of the recall petitions and issue certificates of petition sufficiency to the Board of Elections. The clerk of council did not perform those functions. Willa Hemmons was not the clerk of council and could not perform them. The Board of Elections did not abuse its discretion to decline to schedule the recall elections because the required procedure was not fulfilled. So I think clear
Vindication.
of what the board decided.
I mean, I just think it's a public record. It's not anything, at this point, it's a court order, but I also want to thank you for your hard work. It's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of lawsuits filed, a lot of responses required, briefing required, and you've done a nice job. I just want to say that for the record. Thank you.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Des.
I can echo your remarks. Thank you.
So,
Director.
and there is another case, but we are not a party to this case. And this is in the Court of Appeals. And this is actually where Nathaniel Martin has brought something against Latik Shabazz and Mark McLean, I think, against Antoine Billings. And so basically they
Is this the
can't,
fake council person lawsuit?
yeah, they
Okay.
can't agree who the council members are.
Okay.
Now, we have received the city brought down an oath of office for Antoine Billings, saying that he's a council member. We should issue a certificate of appointment, and we are talking with Mark right now. We are just holding on to that because we don't see a vacancy in office, and since it's before the court, want to see, okay, let the court actually define who these council members are, and then we can go ahead and certify what we need to certify or decertify or whatever the court does to do that. So again, we're not a party to that, but we do have a oath that was submitted that we're waiting on because we don't see the vacancy.
I'm so glad we're gonna be requiring more than just an oath, because we have no way of knowing what that really means, if that really was done.
Right.
Yeah, so that's great.
And then so now clerk of council, Eric Brewer, he has gone through the 3 sets of recall petitions that initially Willa had brought forward, and Clerk Brewer has said that all 3 of those are insufficient. They either a combination of not enough ballot signatures to meet the definition of their charter as to what 25% is. The city is unsure if it's 25% of just the people in that jurisdiction, meaning is it the ward, or 25% of the whole city. They need to figure that out. And then also.
Or 25, was it 20? We've had cases before where the percentage was of the last group that voted, right? Depending on the charter language. Am I remembering?
Right,
that
that's
correct?
right.
And it was for a mayor in the mayor's race.
Right.
Yeah.
And they published the wrong version online on their legal publishing service they use. They used a charter, amended provision of the charter that was not voted upon. So there was an ordinance that referred it to the voters, but it didn't make the ballot for a technical reason. So it's 25% of the voters, but there is some distinction or discrepancy on whether it's citywide for a ward-based person or 25% of the ward voting
Yeah.
electors. So
We are, just a question, we are entitled to rely on the law directors. I mean, we have to rely on the law director's interpretation or the clerk's interpretation of the charter, correct?
generally on its face, but I think if something comes to our attention that undermines her facial or that person, the law director's opinion, we can question it, I think.
Yeah.
We're not obligated to blindly follow the law director, but it is their charter, it's the city's rules, the law director is, the ultimate, is a good source. But if there's reason to question it, there's
Well,
nothing.
yeah, if they come
prevented.
tell us the sky is green and we know it's blue, then obviously.
We can inquire further, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. for the indulgence.
No, so so as of now, the clerk says that there is no sufficiency for us to conduct recall elections. But speaking with Mark, we anticipate that potentially these petitioners could bring a suit against the clerk. I don't think we would be a party to it. So just to mean that it may not be over yet. So we'll wait and see. So that's what we know about East Cleveland as of this point. Capital projects, just two main things, elevators and building. So as of right now regarding the elevators at Hallie, the landlord brought in a different elevator company to take a look at what they have there. And the one smaller, mid-sized freight elevator, which the first company said was beyond repair and it is down and not working. This company says, no, we can make that, we can get it up and running. So the county, with the landlord, it says, go for it. So they started working on some of that electrical work on that elevator. And I think they're gonna do that and other things that come up to be able to make that functional, which would be great, because that's
For forever or just for in the short term?
hopefully forever.
Okay.
So we will, so we'll see what happens with that. So there actually technicians are on site actually working on that elevator.
Operational by May, is that the primary?
I
We don't know.
don't know. So, to be determined. So what we're doing is we're trying to get weekly updates from Public Works on that elevator. Regarding the bigger one, looks like they have it to the point where Public Works and the landlord are looking, they have bids. They have a bid of about $300,000 to modernize that big freight elevator, keeping the current doors that are there that don't automatically work. You have to manually lift them, and $600,000 to do it and have the doors the way it should be. And so the landlord is going to be reaching out to the city of Cleveland, to the department that does elevator inspections, to see is it something where if you modernize this elevator, do you have to take it all the way to, is there certain codes and standards that have to be followed, which things may be grandfathered in now because they haven't been touched, but once you start to touch something, then it's like, okay, do that. So they're trying to get an answer on that. There definitely is a time difference of probably about three and a half months. If you don't do the doors, it'd be about 8 months to get the big elevator up and going. If you do the doors, it's about a year. Those are heavy doors, so I would like to see them do some of those doors, but I have posed a question, is it something where can we do some of the doors? So can we, for example, do the first floor and second floor, which would benefit us, and at 3, 4, and 5, and 6, if they do that later, we'll let that happen later. So we're trying to get some answers to that, but hopefully we should get some movement on that. And if they get that smaller elevator working, it would negate the need to get a construction elevator mounted on the outside of the building and take out windows and cut the brick and do all that kind of stuff. So we continue to monitor it, and hopefully with this new company, and this is the company that they brought in now, is actually the company that replaced the elevators in this building a few years ago. So it's not some fly-by-night elevator company. So that's the elevators. As far as new building, the county has on March 29th, they released a request for proposal out to the real estate world to get bids on a new location for us. April 17th is a pre-bid conference that will happen at the Hallie Building, in which bidders, if they want to come, they can come and kind of see exactly what do we have now and how does this operation work. Myself and others will be there with Public Works to answer questions and of potential bidders that come in. And after they ask their questions of Hallie, if they want to come and see this building, we will gladly bring them over here. I think this building is probably more of a, I would say like a standard type office building, with the exception of the first floor. Where over in that building, just the space and how it's a combination of warehouse and office space. They'll give them a better visual. So that's live. We got contacted by a couple individuals saying, hey, I have a property for you to take a look at. And we say, you got to go through Public Works and go through that process. Channel 5 has inquired, hey, we heard that you're going somewhere new. No, we're working with the county to see what those options are and go from there. So hopefully it will become a reality here since it's out on the streets.
Just in terms of the elevator issue, do we anticipate, and then maybe you don't know yet, that we're going to have any operational issue to run the election? And if we have a drop dead, date where we need to figure out if we need the outside elevator piece that you mentioned. I think at the last meeting you mentioned we had another elevator somewhere else that we could use, but just want to make sure that, we are comfortable, you all are comfortable that we're not going to have a problem administering this election because we have elevator issues.
Yeah.
So,
For May,
for now,
for me, I mean, for me specifically.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable.
Okay.
It may take a little bit longer because we will have the elevator on the dock. That is a newer one that we could use if need be. But if it was a countywide, no. And so this is why that middle elevator, we need to know sooner than later if they're gonna have that operating or not, even if it's not operational for May. Because beyond that, if not, then we will have to go back to the outside elevator, which that in itself that's a big project. There's a lot of permits and all kinds of other things with that, and you would have to start on that.
we have a date, a drop dead date that we know we have to move forward with Plan B. Or are we waiting? We don't know that yet.
We don't have a drop dead date
Okay.
as of right now.
Okay, you'll keep us.
Yeah.
Informed.
Yes.
No problem for May though.
No, May will be good.
First roll, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We might adjust a couple things, but we will be able to execute May with what we have now, just again, based on the size of what that election is. Voter education update. I actually asked Mike West if he could come up, since he's taken a lead on this process, and just talk a little bit about, excuse me, what we're doing here at the board.
Sure. Mike West, the manager of the outreach department. Well, we all knew back in January that we're gonna have a big year ahead for voter education. So I'm happy to say we're off to a really good start. One of the first things we did was our voter education library series campaign. And last month, we conducted 29 voter education events in a period of just 14 days. That means our staff was out in the field for over 112 hours, visiting 14 branch libraries twice in 2 weeks. The libraries were picked because they were in or near areas that were originally part of the May 2nd primary election. But of course, our voter education is universal. So even though some cities were eliminated, we just went forward because we'd already publicized those, and it worked out really well. Because these events were well publicized by the print and electronic media. Our community partners helped out. That included the League of Women Voters, the library system, the county system. They reached out to over 250,000 people through their email blasts. Also our own social media, of course, and in addition to our posts, our followers shared those posts, and it had a domino effect to get on other people's news feeds. So we think it's safe to say that we reached hundreds of thousands of people who were informed about our events, whether they actually came to see us or not. The word is there's something new, and there are the voting rules, and that helped us disseminate that information. But we've got our tentacles all over the place on this. Prior to the library voter education series, the director held an informational Zoom meeting with local voting stakeholders. Around 30 people were part of that meeting from various organizations. The director was able to make sure all of us who work in voter education were sharing the same information to minimize confusion. And to make matters worse, as we know, the laws were kind of tweaked as we went along. So that's a big priority for the director and deputy director, make sure we're all reading off the same page and using those. So in the coming week, we plan to convene a similar meeting to get the update from our partners. Their feedback could be valuable, what they're learning, what they're hearing out in the field. So we plan to set that up, and that will allow us to make adjustments to our voter education efforts or the language that we're using. And now that voting's underway, we will continue posting a variety of messages on our social media platforms to keep people engaged and informed. And we plan to have new messages, about every other day, just to kind of keep it fresh and keep people coming back to work. The director will also be hosting his popular election updates via Facebook Live. He's going to do that on the next couple of Wednesdays. The final election update will be on Tuesday, the 27th, which we know is the day we've got to tell people that it's the deadline for vote by mail ballot applications. And of course, one of our challenges is people get into voting habits and they have to make some decisions to change and learn new habits. And we want to help them with that. The director and deputy director will also be reaching out to the county Republican and Democratic parties to expand voter education. The thought is for each of them to conduct some Zoom meetings aimed directly at the political party officers. These officers then can hand the information down to kind of grassroots folks and kind of a train the trainer sort of thing. Make sure everybody's equipped with the information they need when they get out there. In addition to this, I'm delighted to say that we are getting a lot of requests for presentations, more than I've ever seen since I've been here. So everything from ward clubs to senior facilities, the whole spectrum of people. It's good to know that they know they can reach out to us and we'll come and talk to their folks about these new rules. Yes, that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. West. I appreciate that because it's important that the public understands that the best information they're going to get is from here, because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And I think that it's really affirming to us that they're reaching out to us to get that information. And thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Just when you mentioned the partners that we've been working with and that there's going to be some debrief with, can you just identify who those are, a few of who those folks are?
You know, like Mobilize the Vote, Cleveland Votes, League of Women Voters,
Okay.
and that sort of thing. The kind of, I hate to say usual suspects, but the people that we see that are doing this kind of work, and political folks.
The only question I have, not for Mike, maybe for Tony and Tony, is, so we're educating the voters about HB 458 and all the changes, photo ID changes. Have we updated our poll worker training? Are our poll workers also getting the update so that when voters who don't maybe get the message get to the polls, that they will then know? And we want to get them obviously before they get to the polling locations, but are we working with our poll workers, updating the training for them around House Bill 458?
Yes, and what we've actually done for this May, so order training technically is good for a 3-year window, but we do it on an annual basis, and we've and in the even years, Secretary of State pretty much makes you do the training, but we do it on an annual basis. But we have been given the option of online or in person. For 2023, we're not offering it online. We're requiring all poll workers to come in, and it's because in large part 458. So we have these law changes, and in their world, I mean, photo ID, we have about 97% of people who use a photo ID already, but there's still at least 3%. And so I know this is when I look back to November of 22, that's about 7,500 people who didn't bring a photo ID. They used a utility bill or a bank statement or whatever. So we want to make sure that we're able to facilitate a process with those individuals, so they understand that there's law changes, and at a minimum, then get them a provisional ballot, which then they can come down post-election and get that cured. So that's important, but the provisional process itself is quite different. And now that requires photo ID, and that didn't before. So we want this hands-on training with the workers for that, as well as we rolled out a new yellow bag for them, which will hopefully make pack up of provisionals easier at the end of the night. So we want to physically show them some of these things. So we've done that. The first trainings, Marlene, our assistant manager, she actually conducted those trainings here at the board. It was an opportunity to get some feedback from those trainings and see what kind of questions that she received from that. So then we can go ahead and make changes on then the additional trainings that are going on to try to address, you guess what you think the questions might be, and you try to do the best we can, but then you actually find out what they are. And she's been good working with the team and getting that adjusted. So yeah, we definitely are took a little bit different approach with the poll workers this election.
Great.
One thing I do want to mention that was just a little bit disappointing was yesterday, actually, we invited all the media to come down at 3 o'clock for me to speak about, you know, the opening of this election, and it's hit on the photo IDs. Only one camera came. And that was like,
Mike's coming back.
yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, it is a strange state of affairs that the media isn't, we can't count on it like we used to. Now, I don't know if they thought that they think regionally, and they know the election is relatively small. But yeah, we were disappointed in that. But, you know, we do all we can to get them down here, but sometimes that's just the breaks.
Will we have another effort to try to engage them around these issues? And we still have time.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
The election updates.
well, what they do like, because it's easy and convenient for them, is the Facebooks. They all log into that, and then they record it, they take snippets, so I will do one a week for the next 3 weeks, hitting on, you know, we try to pare it down a little bit and hit where we want at that point in time, so photo ID will definitely be a piece of it. You know, when we get towards, like the last, like Mike said, the last one will be on the close of the application deadline, but I'm sure people know about that. Know that there isn't Monday voting anymore, and just kind of hitting on all the various things. So we do, I will say, we do, I mean, there are good media partners. Maybe yesterday was an off day. There was some other stuff going on.
There's a lot of other stuff
That
going
maybe
on.
they were focusing on, but I will say the Facebooks, they do jump on those, and all of a sudden and what's nice about that is they'll do it one day and then you'll see a little snippet that day, a different snippet the next day. So they kind of get 2-3 days out of it during it. So,
And they did do a nice piece on the library outreaches that we had as well.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yeah,
good.
so they're-
yeah, he was a superstar. He had like a 3-minute interview.
Oh,
Yeah.
Channel 5 was remarkable.
Yeah.
Normally, all you get's about 90 seconds tops. They spent 3 minutes, and I don't know if you
Wow,
saw
I
that in the
didn't see it.
clips, but.
Can you
I did.
send that?
Yeah, I'll
Circulate to us?
resend it to the board members, because it's really a nice piece, and it captured the essence of our efforts and stuff really well.
So we continue to let them know we need them though, and that we count,
Yeah.
counting on them. So,
Well, there's a delicate dance you do with the media that I don't want to explain
Okay,
probably.
that's fine.
Yes,
Just do what you do, which is,
yeah.
thank you.
And then, as far as May 2nd, Deputy Director Gallagher is going to go ahead and take this
All
through.
right, thank you. So the May second primary election has 226 precincts in the election, or over about a quarter of the county. It includes 4 candidate races, 22 issues, which consist of 17 municipal issues, 4 school levies, and 1 library issue. Historically, we're expecting about 20% turnout. The close of registration was this past Monday from 4:30 to 9 o'clock. We received about 150 voter registration cards. The majority of the registration cards were from Employment and Family Services. On Tuesday, yesterday, election support started going out to libraries and other NVR agencies to pick up the on-time voter registration cards. These cards are considered on time because they were timely stamped and they were processed appropriately. The election officials department continues to hire precinct election officials. They're at nearly 100% of their goal, which actually also includes 34 Cuyahoga County workers who are participating in the county poll worker program, which is a positive thing, as well as a number of attorneys in their continuing educational credits program. So about 89% of the PEOs have already been trained. Precinct election officials will continue to hire and train individuals to ensure that we have enough workers on election day, including polling location managers, deputies, ride-alongs, and standby workers. In-person training will continue until April 22nd. And after that, they'll have a Zoom refresher available for the poll workers as well. Early in-person voting started yesterday, and it was a little bit of a slow start. We had 8 voters, but our staff is ready to process them downstairs. Early in-person voting hours for this week through April 24th is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They'll be expanded to 7:30 to 7:30, except for Tuesday, so on April 24th, they'll be expanded to 7:30 to 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., except for Tuesday, April 25th. Will be open till 8:30 because that's the last day for voters to bring in their vote by mail applications. And on that final weekend, on Saturday, voting will be from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the final date of early in-person voting here will be Sunday, April 30th, and will be open from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. The absentee department sent out 2,077 vote by mail ballots yesterday, and they're continuing to process vote by mail applications. The ballot department completed their testing of all the election day voting equipment, and this Friday they're going to receive the ballots, and they're going to quality assure those ballots as well and prepare them for delivery. Election support department is continuing to pack voting equipment and supplies. Berman's Moving and Storage is scheduled to start their first pickup on Monday, April 17th. The Board of Elections has 16 voting location changes for this election. The impacted voters were mailed a specific letter informing them of the change. In addition, we have the voter information guide that highlights their polling location change to them as well. And as well as community outreach is working with all the mayors in the impacted municipalities to work with them to get the message out to voters. So all in all, we're on schedule and in a good place at this time.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board or the director of deputy director?
I just, on the 4-day cure period, how are we going to notify voters that there is a deficiency in that short period of time? How's that going to work logistically if the period's now shorter? How do we, I mean, I just, in my own mind, I can't think through how we notify them or how how that process is going to work.
So as far as provisionals that are insufficient, we have never put that notice out there. Now, when a person comes to vote, we provide them with a piece of paper that gives them contact information where they can call and see the status of their ballot and what the hours it can come and cure and come down. And because we have to work them. So typically we would still be working those past that point. So we don't anticipate a high volume. So meaning that Tuesday's election day, on Wednesday, we start looking at these provisionals. Maybe Thursday, Friday, we've gotten through and we go, oh, these are the ones that are.
So we're already at the third day.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is,
Poll workers act
right,
is that's when I'm the voter and I give you back my envelope and me being the poll worker working with you and I go, oh, I haven't seen photo ID. That form is where they have to really remind you, take this with you and come down here. And you can come down on Wednesday because it's not like for us to work it. And vetting and registration will go ahead and they'll take those in. So really, as far as the provisional process is concerned, it's the poll worker at the voter assistance table doing their job, making sure all the fields are filled. And now the way they're trained, as that process starts, they need to see ID like out of the gate. And
so I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
can we be proactive and have like signage or something just to alert the voters that if there's a problem with their ballot, that they only have, I mean, it just seems to me if we don't even process and aren't able to flag anything until the third day, I mean, it's just to me a lost opportunity, at least if they have some notice that they need to be on alert, or maybe they can be proactive. I don't know, it's just concerning to me. Just wondering if you thought through and how, just logistically, I just don't know how
I mean,
we are going to help a voter figure it out and cure in a timely manner. That's just my concern.
sure. Well, just off the top of my head, I mean, I think one thing we probably could do is we could create our own little card that we could put at the voter assistance table, that when the poll worker does see that they haven't provided the photo ID, so they need to come down here. In addition to the Secretary of State General form, we could give them that little maybe Cuyahoga form that would be more specific, that would say, hey, keep this because you need to go down to the board and provide a phone number on there and maybe just a little bit of explanation as to why. And saying that, you need to apply for identification, you weren't able to do it today, so you need to go down to the board, you know, that.
So what is what's the Secretary of State form? Is it the 155 form or no?
It's,
That's not it.
No, it's
It's-
12
It's a 12
page.
page.
Oh, it's the 12.
And it does inform them
Okay.
that
Oh,
they
that
need
does.
to come, and it does
Okay.
give the times, you know, but maybe as Director Prelati
We
said,
have those
can-
at the table?
Yes,
Okay.
and
I mean,
the,
I'm
and the
just-
coworkers are instructed to give them
Okay,
that.
I just
sheet
want to
as
make
well.
sure that we've done, so I'm not trying to create an extra,
Right.
you know, extra thing for you to do, but I am really worried
Mm-hmm.
about these voters that don't realize that,
No.
you know, by the time we flag it to them in our own process or the process that we used to use, we're at day 3 of the 4-day
And,
period.
and as
so-
far as vote by mail, our staff is informing the voters on a rolling basis, even before election day, if there's a deficiency there.
Yeah, that's another required form. It's 11S.
Okay, I'm sorry, Miss,
No, no, no,
get the
no.
forms confused.
No, no, no. So the vote by mail, as those come in and we're processing those on, even like now, if we were to get something that's deficient, we are instructed by the Secretary of State, it's called Form 11S, that we mail that out to that absentee voter saying, hey, your absentee envelope is not processable. In order to cure it, you need to do such and such. So let's say they didn't put their ID on this actual form, they can just put that in and send it back. And it takes care of that. So that's something we've been doing with them.
Just remind me,
Yeah.
what are they required to provide? What are those voting absentee required to provide?
So it's supposed to be printed name, address, date of birth, ID. And so for vote by mail, the last word of the social security
Or
number
is
is
still good?
still
That's what I thought. Okay,
valid
all right,
for that method of voting,
got it.
as well as writing down the driver's license number,
Right.
whereas the poll, you actually physically have to
But
show
now
it.
there's the third option on the form,
There is,
because it's or
yeah,
photocopy.
yeah, you can do a
Okay.
photocopy.
Okay,
License.
Yeah, you can send a photocopy front and back
that's right. Okay.
of that license. So there's less, other than, there definitely is a change to the deadline for vote by mail applications. And there's a deadline on what we are able to process on the back end. On the front end, there's less probably change to that process than there is to the in-person voting
Okay.
process.
Isn't there a track my ballot to
For vote,
section?
for vote by mail, there is. Yes, there is. So that, on our website, there's a couple of points when we process your application, it's noted. When we mail you a ballot, it's noted. And then when we receive it back and process it, that date's noted. So there's like 3 key dates that voters can get who vote by mail. I'll get track my
I
ballot.
think it kind of says your ballot's been accepted as well. I think, right?
So the way, right,
Tells you it's,
yes.
You're okay.
you're okay.
So we, in here in Cuyahoga, when we return it, like returning and processing it's 1 day. So we got it. So, like if it say it comes in today and it sits in a mail bin for a day, that date's not there. Say we process it tomorrow, the date would be tomorrow's date that it's received for process, because now it's in the pipeline. And it's going.
To your earlier question, Ms. Chappelle, if a voter comes in, and they're dutiful, comes in on Wednesday, they don't have to wait you can work that situation earlier than the 4 days. They kind of go to the front of the line because they came down early. You don't have to wait to work theirs.
Correct,
Okay.
so for the provisional.
But, yeah,
No. So that's something where, again, that's really the most important transaction is that at the polls and they need to tell them. And they can come in on that Wednesday and we haven't processed it at all, but we go ahead, we pull it out because we'll look them up in the system, go your city board precinct this, we go to the shelf, there you go. Yep, and we cure it, and we're good to go.
Thank you.
Does that interaction occur at the voter assistance table, or, because I know Terry's in the past saying how critical the voter assistance table
It
is.
Probably more critical with this particular issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, yeah. Those cards, a lot of people won't take them. Even though you say, well, you can track your ballot, in
Yeah.
a sense. Find out where it's at. You have any questions, so on and so forth. You have so many days. There's a lot of information on this little card, have people don't tell you.
Yeah.
So I think that you probably really need to push it for the poll workers.
Yeah, 'cause
Emphasize.
I think that's our best chance that's
Yeah,
our,
yeah.
of having success is that right there.
And processing the envelope is key,
Yeah.
because we had a lot of deficiencies last election.
And, oh, you know what? That made me think.
People don't know that they're not checking up farther. They assume everything's okay.
Right.
The envelope wasn't filled out correctly.
Yeah, and so that made me think, so and hopefully this will help us too. We have to, House Bill 458 made us reprint some of the documents that we use. Unfortunately, that was an unfunded mandate. So we had 70,000 provisional envelopes that we've thrown in the garbage because we can't utilize them. And we had to produce new ones. So what we've done is, on our provisional envelopes now, they used to be a yellow or a canary colored envelope. We actually now printed these ones white with yellow highlights over the required fields, similar to what we do with our vote by mail applications and our registration cards. And so what we're hoping is, just to help the poll workers and voters when we're at the polls with that, it makes it a little bit clearer. And Tony's got a good eye for that design eye. He kind of laid it out, so it kind of will help us. Now, the overlay that we typically use, we won't have those for May, but we'll have them for the fall. And that's because we had to redesign the envelope, they're not functional anymore. So we'll get that out there. So that's another thing too, to hopefully help us
Probably will.
do that, to draw the attention to that. So we've printed 10,000 envelopes just to make sure we had enough. We don't anticipate 10,000 provisionals, but make sure we have enough for this election, and now we'll go to print it on the rest. Just same thing, registration cards. We had to throw out 150,000 registration cards, and we printed the new ones. So not 150,000, but we're,
I want to, we want the poll workers to do their very best as they always do, and I don't want to, but we really want the voters to be proactive. So hopefully the messaging can be around voters being proactive, also around, taking initiative to make sure that they're double checking to make sure because of the shortened time deadline, we really need the voters to be proactive. So that hopefully that can be part of the messaging as well. Not so much, the poll workers we want our poll workers to do their very best, and they always do, but I think the messaging should also be like, hey, voters, you need to realize there's a shortened window and you have to be making sure your ballots and everything, you've done what you need to do. So.
I think Henry, more from what he's had to deal with over the years, he always was like, the voters have a responsibility.
Yeah.
We can only do so much,
Sure.
and they have to do some stuff too. But what we do is we try to make it as easy as possible.
And if they don't know they have a shortened time period to do it, it does become a little more challenging if you only have 4 days. So anyway, these are just important.
Part of the messaging maybe of that campaign, so to speak, to teach that awareness, bring in awareness to voters.
Yeah.
Make them interested to track the ballot or to just follow along the time frame.
No, yes. And we tried to also, we got to walk that line of making sure that not every provisional voter comes down here, because just a minute percentage need to do that. We
Right,
don't want to
that's true.
also, so, but I think if they would take that form, which Terry working at that table, I would say probably a high percentage make it right into the garbage can before they leave the polling location. So start to take that with them, take a minute at home, read through it and follow up on it.
You're gonna have a very different type of issue with the provisional voting with the lack of ID. That wouldn't send you to the table.
Yeah, so that,
Previous.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in your training, you're incorporating that you have to go take your ID down for Board of Elections.
And every
Go home and
election.
Get it.
Yeah.
Right.
And as every election, obviously, is a real election, it's super important. However, this being a quarter of the county, it is nice to try to do this in a quarter of a county type election. Those voters are just as important as everybody else, but definitely we'll learn some lessons through this process that, we didn't anticipate, and we will then enhance for September and then further enhance for November, when we definitely will have big crowds of participation.
Anything further under new business? Okay, thank you. Our clerks, did we receive any public comment requests?
No public comments, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank
sir. All right, no need for executive session today, so thank you, and I will move to adjourn.
Recess.
Move to recess. Move to recess.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Well,
That's why you did that.
I always-
Oh my gosh.
Okay, wait, I used to turn.